Hello and good morning. This is the first of what I hope will be many of our webinars meant to essentially provide a greater degree of insight into the solar industry and what it might mean to develop a project for yourself, for your community, for your home business, or for your commercial entity or organization. I'm here this morning with my colleague, Ryan Brungardt. My name is Eric Moyer. I am the Strategic Development Manager for Nelnet Renewable Energy. What that role entails basically is I go out hunting for opportunities for development, whether that's a commercial rooftop entity or a community solar project, trying to identify those opportunities for growth, not just for us, but for your business, provide cost savings, as well as experience all the benefits of going solar. Now, there's a couple of different motivations behind why we're doing these webinars, and I'd be remiss if I launched into any content before kind of explaining, the point of this is that we want to try to do a better job of informing the general public about the benefits of going solar, whether it's for your business, for your home, or for your community. The other thing is, there are a lot of different sources of information that can be out there in the marketplace. And, rather than reaching out to self-professed experts, it might be better to chat with folks who actually build this stuff and work with it on a daily basis. The other thing we want to do is empower business leaders, community leaders, and people at all levels of community government, as well as organizations, to have an empowered and thorough understanding of what going solar might mean for their organization. Again, like I said, my name is Eric Moyer. I'm the Strategic Development Manager at Nelnet. And I'll kick it over to Ryan for a brief introduction as well.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ryan Brungardt. I am the Senior Commercial Sales Consultant for our Nebraska office. I have been with the company for a little over 6 years, or almost 6 years now, working primarily in residential solar to begin with. Now have switched over to the commercial side. Definitely am excited about this opportunity to talk a little bit about solar with all of you and to, kind of educate. That's really what we're here to do. And I really look forward to, going through this presentation with you all and hopefully collaborating with you all in the future. So with that being said, if we can pop over to the next slide here, Eric, and we'll talk about our agenda here, and then we'll get this thing rolling.
Sure.
All right, so everybody, here's the agenda. We've kind of talked a little bit about us and who we are. Then we'll jump into our services, what we offer as Nelnet Renewable Energy. We'll kind of touch on a recent project that we're very excited about here in Nebraska. Some of the installation types that we are, looking to use our expertise in, the benefits of solar, the steps to going to solar. Then we'll touch on incentives, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. But feel free, if you do have a question at all throughout, definitely don't hesitate to pop in the chat, I believe, and then we can address that question as we go on. So let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, so a little bit about Nelnet Renewable Energy. Everybody in Nebraska has probably heard of Nelnet at one time or another. If you or a loved one or a friend or family member finance their education, chances are you know Nelnet a little bit better than you might like. We are more than student loans, a heck of a lot more. Nelnet as an entity has actually been a primary investor in a lot of early growth startups, businesses here in the state of Nebraska, everything from real estate to tech companies. And one of the more recent developments back in 2012 was providing tax equity financing to renewable energy projects, primarily on the East Coast. We were founded, in 2012 and have developed into an industry-leading EPC through acquisition. We provide everything from engineering, procurement, and construction all the way through to operations and maintenance. And that even includes identifying opportunities for development, whether that's starting with a green site or working with a developer that has already identified a project that's very close to having notice to proceed. So we respond actively to requests for proposal, all the way through to originating projects and getting them built. We operate in 4 states, Nebraska being our home. But Illinois is primarily where we do the bulk of our construction services. And we've done as much as 30 megawatts in New York. Colorado is a relatively new market for us. But those 4 core states, Illinois, Nebraska, Colorado, and New York, are our primary markets. But we'll consider projects just about anywhere and have developed solar on some scale in up to 20 states already. We're renowned for excellence. We're dedicated to customer satisfaction and safety. Safety one, safety is the second priority, and safety is the third priority. That's a big thing in our industry that needs to be kind of focused on a little bit, is that so much of the solar business has been kind of like a Wild West, and we believe very strongly in taking the same approach that you would in a commercial project, whether you're building a bridge or a hospital, to constructing a solar array. And we found ways to do that with our own internal staff. And that's something else that makes us unique, is that we self-perform and construct a lot of the projects that we build in-house with our own personnel. Also, something very unique in the solar industry. So our services. I mentioned that we're a full-service EPC, and that means engineering, procurement, and construction. But we do a lot more on either end of the construction process, from identifying the site, even assisting with financing. We handle everything, even with incentives after the fact. So helping businesses get that tax credit, the 30% federal tax credit that's available to you for developing solar, as well as any ITC adders that might benefit your organization if you happen to be an energy community, or if you're developing solar on a brownfield. We have a full service team, as I mentioned, with our own construction professionals in-house. That includes everything up to master electricians on down to laborers on site. So we provide truly a full service construction turnkey project for the clients who work with us. And we have a strong financial backbone because we are part of Nelnet, which is a publicly traded bank and listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
All right. Yes. So, hey, Eric, thank you for the insight on who we are and what we offer as a company. I alluded to it in the agenda touch there that I wanted to talk a little bit about a project that we are very, very excited to talk about, and that is Grand Island. This is a 12.2 megawatt site, one of the largest single sites we have done at NRE. Definitely well within our wheelhouse. I believe it's right around 20,000 panels that we installed out there. And this system will be operational, I believe, at the end of this month or the first part of December. And we did a bunch of pre-work and everything and did not get boots on the ground until April. So this project came to life very, very fast from the construction part, just kind of showing a little bit of our efficiency as a company. So we're very excited to highlight this project, as it is a Nebraska-based project. This is not the only large-scale project we've done in the state of Nebraska. We have a couple other ones out in Ogallala, York, Nebraska as well, and then a smaller project up in Ainsworth, Nebraska, on these what you quote-unquote utility-scale size projects of anywhere up to 20 megawatts. So very excited about this project. I know NRE is extremely excited to let everybody know and kind of highlight this project as a company to show how efficient we can be with the services that we offer. All right, so just touching on a few of our installation types. Obviously, we talked about that 12.2 megawatt ground mount site out in Grand Island. We do rooftop solar as well, large scale warehouses, sloped roofs on any church or other entity, as well as carports. We have touched on a 37 kW project out at Sandhills Global here in Lincoln as well, and I believe they're exploring options of adding to that system as well. So carports are definitely an attractive option, although it does kind of tie up parking spaces and everything like that for construction for an extended period of time with these, as they're a little more complex than maybe a roof mount or a ground mount project, but something that we do have expertise in and is an option to look for if you so choose. So these are three of the main options. Obviously, we do touch on battery as well. So battery is another thing that we do offer for any of these projects, and we're very excited about the growth of battery on large scale utility projects, and we hope to explore those moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ryan. When you think about battery technology and its proliferation as well as the cost, it has dropped considerably from where it was just 3 years ago. It was about $500 per kilowatt hour of storage. Now that price is down around as low as about $120 to $200. So the cost keeps coming down and the capability of these systems keeps going up.
Absolutely.
And just as you think about the benefits of solar energy, that's one area where you can improve on that ROI just a little bit if you're self-consuming that energy around the clock.
Yeah, so we'll touch briefly on some benefits of solar energy. Obviously, one of the main benefits is saving money on your operating costs as a business, as a nonprofit even. Saving on any amount of energy cost is vital for continued success. Low cost energy source. So you are locking in your rate when you go solar. You are not, you're kind of immune to those, what we see as energy costs increases year over year from those utilities. And then if you add in that battery potential as well, energy independence as another part of it. Even without battery, you're energy independent. You can be creating your own energy, self-consuming that generation from the sun. And obviously, the biggest one that we're starting to see more and more companies look to is sustainability goals. A lot of companies are pushing to go green. Solar is an easy way to help meet those sustainability goals for your business going forward. So these are the main benefits. Obviously, there's tons of different ways you can look at the benefits of solar energy. One that's not necessarily on here as well is it's better for the environment. We're starting to see more and more, we do get a lot of questions from companies or even homeowners saying, hey, what happens to the solar panel when it is decommissioned? Well, there's a lot of companies out there now that are recycling 99% of a solar panel. So not harmful to the environment. Obviously, there's different ways you can look at that, but you're starting to see a bigger push to go green, and solar is one of the best ways you can do that.
And speaking a little bit about the general makeup of the panels, after all, they are glass, silicon, and aluminum. That's primarily all they're made out of. And those products are all readily recyclable. Even the solder is typically silver. There's some lead, but again, all the metals are essentially recycled and recaptured in that sort of decommissioning process. And it is a kind of a big feather in the cap for the industry that we're being proactive about decommissioning. Granted, it's about 25 to 30 years off in most cases, but still knowing that there is an end of life plan for this equipment. And repowering is as simple as essentially adding new panels to an existing array. You can reuse the same racking and repower with a new inverter, essentially increasing the production capability of an existing system. And it's a great thing to do, especially if in the event that there is storm damage. Very rare, but it can happen. The panels themselves are rated to golf ball. I've seen as much as softball hail be shrugged off by these things. Now, granted, if you do have some that are damaged, it is just no different than any other insurance claim, and results in just new panels being replacing the old ones. The rest of the equipment is basically unaffected. Speaking a little bit about that process is our steps to going solar. So essentially the before step, looking at it from the standpoint of, I think this is a good idea. Maybe I want to look into it. The best thing to do is start having a conversation with us early and often. We will go through your overall energy consumption, what your billing looks like, and identify opportunities for cost savings with the solar by going solar. Battery system might not be right for you based on where you're located and based on your consumption profile. If it is, great, we'll recommend it. If not, we'll steer you clear of that technology because it is an added cost despite coming down considerably. After we get to a point where we have a pretty good handle on what you need as far as capacity, we like to verify site conditions with a site visit. And that's reviewing all the electrical equipment on site to understand essentially where we're going to have our point of interconnection, or POI. Then we put together a proposal that gives you a very soup to nuts example of this is what it's going to cost. We try to include any tax credits or adders that might be qualified, and additional information about the individual racking to be used, the mods that are going to be selected, as well as the actual inverter that's going to be transitioning the power from the panels into AC power to be consumed at the meter. Getting into a little bit more detail on the site visit, again, it's to thoroughly vet the site conditions. Like, we want to know what we don't know about your facility and about your community and where we're going to interconnect and how. It's not enough to guess. And so often with commercial projects, we're working on a scale where baseline assumptions aren't good enough. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on at Nelnet Renewable Energy is providing the pricing that is consistent with the actual cost of the installation. Even our indicative numbers are pretty doggone close to what you'll actually be paying. Collaboration with utilities and power districts, I can't say this enough. We couldn't do what we do without our partnership with the utilities.
Absolutely.
It's not a matter of, kind of being like, we're installing solar and we can cut the cord. Quite the contrary. I mean, it's possible to develop an off-grid system, but it's significantly prohibitive to do so. And our focus is on collaborating with utilities to make sure that the solar installation is not just beneficial to your business or to your community, but to the utility upline, and making sure that we're doing the best thing and working in the best conscience possible, particularly in the state of Nebraska, where public power is such a big part of what makes this state great. I talked about accurate pricing and cost control. We don't just guess. We literally talk to our suppliers to identify total cost of construction on every individual module, every foot of wire. So those are real numbers that we're using, and it's true cost for the actual construction. And this is a long-term partnership. This is not something that we enter into lightly with the expectation we're going to install it and just disappear. Our plan is to provide maintenance, monitoring, and testing long after the installation has been completed, and to act as a partner long-term. And that's a very important consideration when selecting a contractor for this kind of work, because let's face it, folks, this thing is built to last 25 to 30 years, or at least it should. Available solar incentives here in the state of Nebraska. We don't have a lot of the amazing programs and givebacks that are available in states like California or Illinois, but we do have, of course, the federal tax credit, which is good for 30% of the total cost of construction. This is paid as a tax credit for qualifying businesses against revenue, and for nonprofit, it is paid as a direct payment. So you receive a check for 30% of the total cost of installation from Uncle Sam.
Yeah, and I will. One thing to add to that for the nonprofits is with Nelnet Renewable Energy, and I know we touched on what we can do on the tax equity side, everything like that. We can also help facilitate those things, get you in touch with the right people as well. If you do have questions as a nonprofit entity on how to go about and navigate that process to make sure you do get that 30% direct pay back. Because obviously that is a huge thing that was not available as little as 2 years ago. So it's a very big thing, and we're starting to see more and more nonprofit entities look into solar because of that direct pay, helping them fund the project. So now I will touch on the REAP grant here through the USDA grant for rural businesses. For renewable energy projects, it can be up to 50% of the project cost in a federal grant could be, given to you for the project. And I believe it caps at $1 million. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a couple different benchmarks, but it's up to 50% of the overall project cost can be granted in a federal grant to you for that project. And then we with the local utilities, Omaha Public Power District and LES, there are some incentives available. And on the next slide, we'll kind of touch on that a little bit more in depth. But there are some incentives available for businesses to go solar. And then also another benefit of businesses looking into renewable energy projects is you can depreciate those assets. And I believe it could be done on up to a 5-year schedule. You could bonus depreciate up to 100% of the cost in 1 year. However, it does depend on your tax situation. So again, being in sales, I'm definitely not a tax professional, but everybody on the business side does have those tools available for that they can look into it to see how that could benefit them as well, which would definitely help with the overall return on investment of a project if you can depreciate that asset.
So let's talk a little bit about net metering, because that's the long-term payback on these systems. So, okay, it's enough that it makes energy. What do you do with the excess? So if the system produces more than your home or office or organization consumes, the excess energy that's backfed into the grid, you are credited for each kilowatt that is sent back into the grid to be consumed by your friends and neighbors. Every utility handles net metering a little bit different. But for the most part, the way the system works is every kilowatt you backfeed offsets the kilowatts you consume at night. So if you consume if you don't consume all of the electricity that is produced by the solar array during the day, it's not wasted effort. You actually get some credit for that overnight against the consumption that you have when the sun isn't shining. So thinking about incentives, talk a little bit about OPPD if you can, Ryan.
Yes, OPPD, so Omaha Public Power District, has a $2,000 capacity payment that is paid directly to you in the form of a check. Usually this comes a couple weeks after your system has been energized. There's just a couple different benchmarks that you have to meet. So as a customer, you have to use a preferred vendor, which would be found on OPPD's website, their Trade Ally program. So Nelnet Renewable Energy is proud to say that we are a member of that Trade Ally program. The system itself has to be 3 kilowatts or larger, and it has to be between 90 and 270 degrees in an azimuth. So they will not benefit if you put northern facing solar. And if anybody is installing northern facing solar, we should probably have a much larger conversation at that point due to overall performance of a system. But there's just a few benchmarks, and us at NRE, we do help navigate this process, submit all necessary paperwork along to get this incentive for those eligible customers. And the beauty of that is it's very worry free, and you will know shortly after the interconnection process if your system does qualify for this rebate. It is a very small incentive. I know it hasn't been around that long, however, for OPPD, so they're starting to get more and more solar friendly. I just attended their Trade Ally Summit a week and a half ago, and they are very excited that the incentive is still going to be around in 2025. Now that could change overnight, but they do not anticipate that changing based on their budgets and the increased potential for solar in the OPPD service territory.
And for context, a 3 kilowatt system is anywhere from 8 to 10 solar modules. That's 8 to 10 panels on a roof. So it's a very small system could benefit you. So if you're looking, just to dip your toe in the water a little bit, and obviously 3 kilowatts is not going to offset, a manufacturer's load at all, essentially. But, there are incentives available. The larger systems obviously don't necessarily benefit from this incentive as much as potentially a residential customer might. So, but that incentive is still there. So they are showing that they are still solar friendly. Yeah.
Lincoln Electric System, however, here in Lincoln has a much, much more lucrative incentive available. They will pay you $375 per kilowatt for south-facing solar and $475 for western-facing solar. Now, somebody might ask, well, why are they paying you more for western-facing solar? The reason that they give us, and we tell customers, is that it is to help offset peak demand usage. So between 4 and 7 o'clock, you could still be producing your own power with western-facing solar panels to kind of help offset that peak usage time when everybody comes home from work and turns all the lights on, everything like that. They do see a spike in usage, so that western-facing solar is incentivized a little bit more. So, for example, if you have a 10 kilowatt system that is south-facing, you're going to expect a check back from the utility for $3,750. If that same 10 kilowatt system is western-facing, you would receive a check for $4,750. And LES takes pride in being very, very quick with this rebate. They will get this to the customer about 10 to 14 business days after the system is energized, after all inspections and that system is on and operating. You can expect a check relatively quickly from LES.
And other you added on here and included is other technologies, so like bioreactors, that sort of thing. And so it's a little less common, but LES does have an incentive for those systems as well. So if you're feeling creative and some of those new technologies that are out there seem attractive to you and the way you consume energy, there's also an incentive for that. Thinking a little bit about the big utility in the state of Nebraska, I mean, we'd be missing out if we didn't talk about NPPD, right? So NPPD has currently no incentives for solar or small wind projects, things of that nature, but what they do have is incentives for EV charging. The 90% reimbursement for nonprofit organizations against the total cost of installation. Now, that's less any incentives that you might get from the federal government or from any grants that you might be eligible to receive. But if you just pay retail out of pocket for the installation of a car charger, this is an example that we installed at Sandhills. Ryan mentioned their solar canopy structure. That canopy structure shades the EV charging area. And we can do it, and this qualifies for level 2 as well as level 3 chargers. Depending on where they're located, the NPPD incentive is relatively new, and they're kind of taking it on a case-by-case basis. But as written, the $200 per kilowatt of charging capacity capped at 50%, or looking at it from a 90% standpoint for commercial businesses, just depending on where it's located and how it's most beneficial to the organization. So level 2 and level 3 chargers are both included and eligible for some of these credits. And really the time could not be better for this work. So if this is something you're considering doing, especially if you have an electric fleet, or if you're considering adding an electric fleet, adding these chargers is a great idea. The only caveat that I want to throw in is that they must be available 24 hours a day to the general public. So they can't be in your yard locked behind a fence under lock. So, but if they are in a public location, public site, publicly available, it's eligible to receive this credit. So even if you do have your own fleet vehicles, individual charging events from the general public are going to vary, but for the most part, statistically speaking, 97% of all charging events happen in the home. So residential EV users probably aren't going to be using your fast chargers, at least not in the near term. So we covered a lot of ground and a lot of detail here. And one of the biggest things that I want to thank everybody on this call for doing is taking this first step to learn a little bit more about this technology and about the benefits that are available to businesses here in the state of Nebraska. We have some of the cheapest power in the country. That shouldn't dissuade you from considering what sort of financial as well as marketing and branding benefits come from having renewable energy power your business. And with that, do we have any questions? You're welcome to throw them in the chat or chime in. I think we have the ability. I don't have the ability to unmute anybody, but we don't have anyone muted. One thing I can speak to, I don't see anything popping up in the chat just yet, is, we talked a little bit about construction and types of installations and looking at large-scale installs on commercial rooftops. Typically, a flat roof, if it's a membrane-style roof, that's done with a ballasted system. And how much weight does a ballasted system add to the roof? I mean, is this going to be something that's going to compromise the structure or cause damage? Well, it kind of goes back to that process that we go through with the site visit. We document thoroughly, and if you have plans for the building, those get run through a third-party engineer. We have our own in-house team, but of course, we want to make sure from a liability standpoint and also from an assurance standpoint that we're providing every degree of caution possible to ensure that we're doing a conscientious job of installing solar on your business and not compromising that roof structure. So we review the engineering and make sure that the roof loads are sufficient to handle the additional 4 to 5 pounds per square foot that will be added for a ballasted system. That's pretty typical, about 4 to 5 pounds per square foot. Can be as low as 3 pounds per square foot in some areas, especially if it's a larger array that requires less weight be added to individual areas of the array, because the collective whole is more than sufficient to keep the thing well planted on the roof. And you might be thinking, well, ballasted array, it's just a couple of blocks holding it on. How efficient is that? How effective is that at holding it down, given the weather we see here in Nebraska? Pretty doggone efficient. Most of these racking systems are rated to a minimum of 120 miles an hour of straight line winds. Now, granted, we have those winds here in Nebraska. Typically, if you have those winds at your site, you have more to worry about than your solar. So,
very true.
Take it with a grain of salt, but systems are rated to 120 mile an hour straight line winds for a ballasted system.
Yes. And one thing I'll touch on too, Eric, is if nobody does have any questions right away, I know on the first slide, our emails are available. Eric and myself do take pride in being very responsive to emails, or right there as well. On the last slide, we are very responsive. That's what we take pride in. We want to make sure and give you that undivided attention. There's no such thing as too many questions. I've had several customers in the past, send me a list of about 10, 12 questions, and I'll just fire back answers. And if there's things that I do not know personally, I will definitely not try to hide it. I will say, I don't know. I can get you that answer, however, and I will leave no stone unturned to make sure that you have all your questions answered and are 100% comfortable with everything and understand everything, because there is a lot to know when it comes to solar and everything. So this hopefully gives you a little more insight to the process and what's available and how we kind of handle things at NRE. But we are definitely excited about this opportunity. So I wanted to personally thank all of you for taking the time out of your days, especially on a Monday, to sit with us and listen to Eric and I chat about solar in Nebraska. So again, thank you very much. And I look forward to hopefully collaborating with many of you moving forward.
Right on. Yeah, we'll hang around for another 3 minutes or so just to keep it loose and available. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Otherwise, again, I want to thank everybody for jumping on the call today. We covered a lot of ground. So battery storage, commercial rooftop installations, whether they're ballasted or a composite shingle rooftop, similar to like a residential application. Those are all things that we're happy to do and more than willing to provide pricing on. There is a solution for just about every roof type imaginable, even tile roofs. There are things called tile hook that will tie into the structure under and fit in between the tiles, allowing us to attach modules to that roof. The ballasted systems that I mentioned, canopies and carports. If you want to see one of these in action, you're welcome to drive past Sand Hills Global. You can see the canopy that we constructed there, as well as the car chargers that are available and I believe open to the public as well. So there's certainly options out there for seeing what's been done and what types of technologies are available in the community. We are an active, we're also, there's a sort of a laboratory example of a ground-mounted installation, similar to what you would find in a large-scale project like we did out in Grand Island at Northwest High School here in Lincoln, Nebraska, as well as Standing Bear High School, way out on the east side of town, southeast side of town. So welcome to drive by and check those out. It's part of the reason why LPS wanted to put them in, is they wanted to expose more members of the community to renewable energy and just show them how the technology works. And I see we have Travis typing a question. Well, I'm waiting on bated breath. What comes out of that? Awesome. How agnostic are your customers to inverters and PV modules that you use in your commercial projects? Also, how does your procurement team ensure a risk-averse approach to sourcing modules for the projects outside of Tier 1? Wow.
That's a great question.
Appreciate
Eric,
it.
if you want to, go ahead and take that one if you wish.
Yeah, let's see if I can take a swing and a miss. So in terms of inverters and PV modules, I think you're asking how agnostic. Yeah, there isn't a lot of clamoring for any one brand name. This technology, when it's Tier 1, I mean, that's primarily all we install. We're not really out to, we're looking for Tier 1 manufacturers pretty much on everything, whether it's a large-scale commercial project all the way down to the smallest commercial project. We still use Tier 1 mods on everything. But as far as branding is concerned, nobody's really asking for any specific content or material outside of Buy America, Build America requirements or domestic content adders for the ITC. That's something that does pop up in request for proposal that we've seen come through in the last year. And I'm sure is just going to be the norm moving forward. So trying to identify and source domestic content has been challenging. It's possible. The stuff is out there. And we can get inverters from Yasukawa, which doesn't sound terribly domestic, but is. It's domestically manufactured products with the majority of components being sourced right here in the U.S., just as an example. So we can get Yasukawa inverters, pretty much in any quantity necessary for a large-scale project that meets Build America, Buy America standards, which are the most stringent. Domestic content adder is a little bit easier to get, but the BABA 10% adder to the ITC is a little bit more of a challenge. But nobody's necessarily requesting any specific brands, what have you, that sort of thing. Thank you. Appreciate you jumping in.
Yes.
And
that was a great question too. Like,
any other questions, don't forget to ask. We are more than happy to share whatever detail we have to any prospective client, even industry partners. So don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if there's anything we can do. Any scope of construction, we are a full service EPC, but all those services are available a la carte to our partners. And we want to make sure that, we all grow this industry together. So thank you so much for your time today. Again, feel free to email us directly if you have any further questions. And with that, we'll sign off and let you get back to your Monday. Thank you.
Appreciate it, everyone. Have a wonderful day.